wanted to welcome everybody to One Day Immersion in TV, Cable, and Digital Entertainment. Very, very excited to have you here. I have had the phenomenal opportunity of developing this program with a wonderful advisory committee that actually includes many people that are up here on stage with me right now, as well as what I call an A-team of executive committee members, which include Craig Parks, starting over there. I'm going to skip you for now. Zanita Henderson, excuse me, Craig is actually with Pivot, and he's on one of the panels later in the afternoon. Zanita Henderson is with ARIS. ARIS is our presenting sponsor for the conference, so big fat thank you to ARIS and company. Yes, thank you. And Robert Miner with Miner & Co. Studios. Probably one of the smartest people I've ever met, and most creative for sure. But let me get back to Evan. Evan Shapiro is the president of Pivot, and I wanted to just share a very quick story. So I had the opportunity, I was looking at media trade publications, and I kept seeing his picture in the different articles, and I was like, who's this guy who I keep seeing, like month after month, you know, with this big smile on his face, and they kept writing about him, and at the time he was with Court TV. And we were just starting a lecture series, and we wanted Evan because he was this young, hot, in many ways, this young, hot, up-and-coming executive that was really making a name for himself. So I finally had an opportunity to meet him, and I was told, you have 4 minutes. Adam Weinstein told me, you have 4 minutes. And I said, no problem. And so after my 4-minute pitch to Evan, asking for his support in this new lecture series, he said to me, yes, I'll do it. And my knees buckled a little bit because it was a pretty big freaking deal. It was. He's shaking his head, it was. So 8 years later, here we are, and I have Evan Shapiro standing next to me and us. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you for having my back. Thank you for supporting this effort and for making this day possible. Thank you so much. I wrote things because I didn't want to forget anybody. But we also have some other fabulous sponsors that I want to quickly thank. C-SPAN, HBO, Multi-Channel News, the Cable Center, my old stomping ground, Promax BDA, the National Society of Collegiate Scholars, who you'll hear a little bit about them today, and they're also going to host one of the tables in the career resource session at the end of the day. I mean, again, the support is amazing, and I thank you so very, very much. So we're doing something a little bit different. We have some 30-minute, the majority of the panels are 30 minutes, so you only have time to pay attention. I mean, that's really it. If you really like something and hear something interesting, tweet about it. It's ODI NYC 2013. So I don't want to take too much more time, but I want to thank everybody for coming. We have people watching, hopefully across the country, so tweet your questions in, please. But we're expecting a lot more of you to come, and I really want you to enjoy this day, take advantage of resources in front of you, and let's start the show. Thank you.
I'm your host today, not just, and that was 8 years ago. So now I'm old and cold, I guess. So the idea here today is that by the end of today, you should have a really good idea of how to get your career in television started. Whether you're in university and you want to use this as a networking opportunity for internships, or starting to focus on individual paths that you might take in the communications industry, or you're a graduate and you're here today looking for that entry point. There's going to be a lot of great advice. What's interesting about this is that we've created this as an interdisciplinary masterclass. the concept here is you're going to hear from pretty much every aspect of the business: distribution, technology, ad sales, content. And it's meant to really make you the best interview anyone's going to have for an entry-level or internship job in the industry on any given day. But that only happens if you, A, pay attention, and B, take advantage of the time that these incredibly busy, very, very smart executives are offering you. This is a gift to you. By having these people assembled, you're getting basically the collective brain of the television industry in one compressed day. It doesn't happen very often, and if you don't take advantage of it, it's a lost opportunity. So that's the agreement we have with each other. Plus, Eris is giving out some cool gifts in between some of the panels, so there's an opportunity to win that as well. But the idea here is these executives have offered their time. The only thing we ask is that you respect their time by paying attention, and by, when you get a chance to talk to them, you know, be prepared with some good questions. This industry is amidst an enormous amount of change, and we're still figuring stuff out ourselves. We can get as much from you as you can get from us. So is that cool? Is that cool? Yes. Okay, great. So you're going to hear a lot from different panelists today. These panelists are experts in their field. And then you're also going to be getting to meet some moderators. And the interesting thing about some of our moderators are that they haven't been in the industry nearly as long as some of the panelists. And the concept there was to create a bridge between you, who are getting started in the industry, our moderators who have been in it, you know, a moderate amount of time, and the panelists who have been in the business, like myself, for 1,000 years. And what the one unifying thing you'll see is that there are very few people up here today, in fact, I can think of none, who aren't themselves. It's very difficult to stand out when you spend all of your time trying to fit in. And what I love about all the panelists and all of our moderators today is that they are who they are. They do not apologize for who they are. It doesn't mean that they're not respectful and they don't try to follow some of the certain rules, but they have really beat out their own path. So pay attention to that as well. And the first moderator is definitely an example of that. I've known Brandon for a number of years. I actually met him. I was lecturing at Stern School of Business in the master's program there, and in the business school there. And Brandon was there getting a joint JD MBA. He then, a year later, came and became my assistant. This is with more education than I have, JD MBA degree. He came and sat on my desk so that he could learn the industry from the ground up. He used that experience, he used that networking opportunity to go branch out and go work at Piper Jaffray as a media analyst there and a consultant there. And then he's managed to take that up and become the vice president of media and technology at RBC Capital Markets, where he advises different media companies, big media companies, on their strategy. And this all at a very young age. So he's a good friend. He's also a really, really great thinker, and he is the moderator of our first panel.
Thank you, Evan. It's a very lovely introduction. I'm very honored to be here. You know, Evan told you a little bit about my background. I definitely took a non-traditional path, and like all of you, I'm really still at the beginning of my career and figuring things out. And it's a really big honor to be here with these executives who have shaped so much of the landscape and continue to shape the landscape. And this is an incredibly exciting time to be starting your career in media, because what media is changes every day. You all are watching TV on your phones, and you're talking on the phone on your computers, and you're tweeting at the celebrities that you're watching on TV in real time. And it's the executives in front of us' job to figure out what that all means and create content and create distribution strategies that reaches all of you and do it in real time. And you guys are going to be an enormous part of that, of shaping it. As Evan said, the media industry really needs you. And you know, your fresh insights and what's going on in your lives is incredibly relevant to what the people you're going to meet on stage are doing right now. So it's an honor for me to be here. The panelists today are Doug Holloway from Ion Media Networks, Kathleen Finch from HGTV and DAY Network, and Susan Marfa from Bravo, Oxygen, and Sprout Ad Sales. And I'll let each of them introduce themselves. And then the plan for today is talk a little bit about how they got where they are today, some of the different jobs in television and media, and how you guys can plan your next steps and begin your careers, and some of the best practices you want to do and things to keep in mind to start great careers. So in terms of introductions, I'll turn it over to the panelists, and I'll ask them when they introduce themselves to tell us all about one or two shows that you're currently watching and how you're consuming those shows, if it's on your phones, if it's on Netflix, just to get it all out there and bridge the gap with what we're doing in our own time.
So I'll start.
Great.
Okay. So as you can see, I oversee a number of brands within the NBC Universal cable portfolio. And in addition to that, about 5 years ago, we launched an initiative which was to sell the value, extract extra value out of putting together many pieces, and that was the Women at NBCU play. So I'm in ad sales, by the way, I didn't say that to clarify it. And a couple of shows that I watch on a regular basis are Homeland and Empire Boardwalk, and I actually watch it on TV, but on demand.
When it's on? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Kathleen Finch, and I'm the president of HGTV and DIY Network, which is a sister network to HGTV. They are both owned by the Scripps networks. We have 6 cable networks and related licensing businesses and websites. I've been with the company for about 14 years. Before HGTV, I was with the Food Network, head of programming, and I'm really on the content side. I create programming. I'm a former journalist. And I've been in the industry for around a little over 20 years. The show that I am obsessed with right now is I'm catching up on Game of Thrones. I watch it on my iPad, and I watch it only on my treadmill to make me go on the treadmill. It's very effective.
My name is Douglas Holloway. I'm president of distribution for Ion Media, and Ion is a hybrid company. It is privately owned. It is both Ion Network, we have 4 networks. Ion, Cubo, which is a kids channel, Ion Life, which is a lifestyle channel, and Shop TV, which is a infomercial channel. And Ion, the primary network, is a hybrid. We're the largest owner of TV stations in the country. We cover 70% of the distribution via TV stations, and the rest of the country we cover via what we call wide area, which is a satellite cable delivered network. And I run all distribution, so I do all deals with cable operators or broadcasters. I've been in the business 33 years, I think it is. Somewhere around there, 35, 33. I've lost count. I started in the business. I have an MBA from Columbia and an undergraduate degree in broadcast communications. Started off wanting to be a producer and director, and then decided I was going to go into the business side. And worked for USA, one of the creators of the Sci-Fi Channel, worked at NBC, both on broadcast and cable side, and been at Ion for 2 years.
Great, thank you. So I think it would be helpful if you could tell all of the panelists how you got where you were today. Did you set out to be in the roles that you're in now, and how did you get your first jobs, and how did you get your current jobs? Do you want to start, Doug?
Well, my story is really, really interesting, I think, anyway. But, you know, I will say this to what Brandon said earlier, and what Evan said. I would rather be out there as one of you than sitting up here being one of me, because the industry is in such an influx of situation that the future is very, very exciting. And I probably won't be around to see it other than as a consumer. Oh, and I forgot to say, the shows that I watch currently, I watch Scandal on my iPad.
Wow.
And I watch it on my iPad because I also am a big football fan, so I watch Thursday Night Football on my big screen, and I put my iPad on my coffee table, and I watch it streamed via Time Warner Cable. And the other show that I watch a lot, and also watch it kind of the same way, and I flip back and forth from the big screen to the small screen, is Boardwalk Empire. And that comes on during Sunday Night Football. So the only way I can watch both, because I don't have a lot of time to watch it, you know, I fill up my DVR and I never go back and watch it. So I watch kind of in real time on 2 screens. That's kind of my picture-in-picture. So I try to keep up. And so how I got into business, well, I wanted to be in production. I wanted to be a producer, director. And I was an undergraduate at Emerson College, and I had a job as a news writer at WEEI radio station in Boston, which was a CBS-owned radio station. It was all news, just like any all-news station. And I was a news writer, and I had to write the wheel, which was a 20-minute wheel. And I was a terrible typist. And this was when you had typewriters, so you know, I knew that my future in news journalism was very limited. And one day I'm walking in the hallway of the radio station, and I see this elegant, tall, handsome, well-dressed, 3-piece suit black man. And, you know, in Boston in 1974, you know, there weren't a lot of black men, and there certainly weren't a lot of black men that were in suits in a business. And so I walked up to him, and I said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm the general manager of the station." And I was in shock, and so I said, "You know, could I come and meet with you and get some career advice?" And he said, "Sure, make a date with my secretary." So I did, and about 2 weeks later, I got an appointment to see him, and I dressed up in my blue polyester suit, my only suit that I had at the time, and combed my afro. And I went in and I sat down with him, and so he said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a producer, television producer." And he said, "No, that's not what I'm asking you. What do you want to do long term in your career?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Let me be more specific. What do you want to do in 20 years? Now, 20 years to a 21 or 20-year-old is a lifetime, because that's how old you are. That's how old I was. I was 20, 21. And I said, "I don't know. I don't know where I want to be in 20 years. So he said, "Go back, figure it out, and then come back and see me." So I did. And I decided, and he said, the most important thing that he said that day was, he said, "Dream. Don't be hampered by what you see today. Dream. Dream where you want to be in 20 years. And so I did. And I decided that I wanted to be president of a television company. Now, mind you, in 1974, for me to be thinking that I was going to be president of a television company was like saying, you know, I was going to pilot, you know, a space flight to Mars. Forget the moon, Mars. Because there were no black executives in television. There were only 3 television major companies, CBS, ABC, and NBC. And so it was a very far-fetched idea. And as a matter of fact, I went back to meet with my college advisor, who, my dean, and so I said, "What do you think about me going and being president of a television company?" And he just laughed. And he was a black man, by the way. He laughed at me, and he said, "Oh, I don't mean to laugh at you, but it's funny, okay, because there's nobody there to pattern your career after." And I said, "Well, you know, let me be more specific. I not only want to be a president, but I'm going to decide, I'm going to throw away my career as a production guy or producer, director, and I want to go to business school and get an MBA, because I figured that in order for me to achieve that, I really needed to know business, and I didn't have a clue about business. So he said, well, you know, there's been nobody that came out of Emerson, which was a communication school, to go and get an MBA. So I really can't advise you. So I had a friend that was at Harvard in the MBA program, so I went and talked to him. And I said, you know, what do I need to do? And he kind of schooled me on taking the GMATs and whatnot. And then I came back and I researched the MBA programs and decided I wanted to go to Columbia. And I went back to my advisor and I said, well, you know, what do you think? I want to go to Columbia. And he said, he laughed again. He said, well, you know, I can't advise you. We never had anybody go to an Ivy League school, let alone a business school. So long story short, I went back to the head of the GM of the radio station. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to be president of a television company. And the man was Gene Lothery, who later became president of the radio station division of CBS. And he said, this is what you do next. Make a 20-year plan. Plan it out. How you're going to get there. So I went back and I made a plan. And I researched executives, and most executives that were running television companies in 1974 or 5 were lawyers or ad sales guys. So I decided I wanted to go into sales. That was going to be my trajectory, and I was going to get experience and be a generalist, because I figured I had to be better than my counterparts, because I was going to create a new path. So I decided I went to get an MBA in marketing and finance. When I came out, I went to General Foods to learn sales and marketing, and I got a job as a assistant product manager. And then I decided after 2 years, I plotted out my plan so that there were 7 layers that I need to go through in the communications business to get from ground zero to president. And 7 years times 3 is 21. So I decided that in order for me to get to be a president, I needed to be in a job no more than 3 years. So when I went to CBS, I plotted out the jobs, and I went into finance originally and strategic planning. And after that, I tried to get into ad sales. And at the time, you know, for a black man to get into television or network television ad sales was really a pipe dream. And after a year and a half of trying to make the conversion from finance into ad sales, I gave up. Oh, I didn't give up, but along came an opportunity. And this is where, you know, kind of blind opportunities and dumb luck come into play. I was in strategic planning, and in strategic planning, there were a bunch of analysts. We sat around the table, and everybody, I was the young guy, the new guy in the team, and so everybody chose an area specialty. And the last specialty that was assigned was new technology. So I got new technology. And what was new technology? Anybody have a clue what was new technology? Cable television and satellites. They assigned me to become the specialist on cable television and satellite delivery of signals. And there was no satellite delivery of television signals. All the television signals were transmitted via landlines. So I became the expert in satellites, and it was new, and cable television. Lo and behold, a year later, CBS decided they were going to get in the cable television business, and they started a channel called CBS Cable. I had become friends with Bob Pittman, and that's another story. And Bob Pittman was friends with the guy who was hired to head up affiliate relations, because he worked at Cube in Columbus, Ohio, and that's another story. Cube, read about Cube. And so he made a call for me, and I got hired in affiliate relations sales for CBS Cable, and then the rest was history. And I ended up at USA Network, and you know, I had a long run of 26 years with USA and grew the business, became president at the age of 42 of distribution for USA under Barry Diller, and I got there in 21 years.
So by the end of today, hopefully you guys will have 20-year plans, and the panelists will take a look at them. Great, thank you.
Well, my story is the polar opposite of Doug's. He had a plan, I didn't have a clue. I was an English major in college, and if I can digress for 1 second, for those of you who are only taking broadcast classes, please don't do that. If you cannot graduate as a good writer, you are going to stymie your career like nothing else can. And I know people who are brilliant programmers who cannot get ahead because they cannot write an intelligent memo. And I'm not kidding. I mean, I'm not joking about this. To be a good writer is probably the most important skill any young person can have. So please don't take a whole lot of classes on how to light for television. You learn that on the job. What you need to know how to do is be a clear communicator and come across as very intelligent and enthusiastic. The tech stuff, just don't focus too much on that. That will not get you ahead, and I mean that pretty adamantly, at least from where I sit as somebody who employs people. I was an English major in college and wanted to be a journalist, and similar to what Brandon did, I ended up taking a job that, frankly, I didn't have a JD MBA, but I did have an English degree from Stanford, and my first job was as an assistant. But it was an assistant at CBS Network News because I wanted to be a journalist. And I was only an assistant for about a year, but it got me in front of people like Andy Rooney and Dan Rather, who, you know, at this point you may not know who those people are, but at the time they were very big deals, and they really took me under their wing. And I spent about 15 years at CBS Network News as a journalist and had a great career. I decided to move into cable because my husband and I have 3 children, and my husband's also a journalist, and the worldwide traveling that we both were doing was just not working for our family. So I drew the short straw at the time and opted to take a desk job. So I went to cable as well, which was also kind of new, and I went to the Food Network, which at the time was a mess. Our company had just bought it. It was really sort of what we called sort of a dump and stir kind of crazy idea for a network. But they didn't have anybody on staff who knew how to tell stories, which is what I did as a journalist. So I was hired by Food Network, spent 7 years there, ended up as the head of programming, which means I was running the programming team, coming up with show ideas, hiring chefs, hiring other talent, and then 7 years ago moved to our company's headquarters in Knoxville, where I now run HGTV and DIY Network. So I took my expertise in content and writing and storytelling and sort of turned that into my career. It was a little bit of a different way. I had no plan. It was a lot of happy accidents, but at the core of what I did and what I've been able to do came communication skills, which I really advocate as being the most important job skill in the media business that you can develop.
I actually would second that. Not that that's what my degree is in. I also did not have a plan, but maybe even less than your plan. I was in college, and I've always had left brain, right brain going, which serves me and doesn't serve me. But I had a degree in art and economics and got out of school and did not have a portfolio, like a graphic artist portfolio. So I don't know what I was thinking. I also would say I didn't have a lot of guidance or sort of mentors or role models, and maybe nobody told me I should, and I'm telling you, find one. So I got out of school, I worked in the fashion industry for a very short amount of time, and then got into advertising at an advertising agency, which was fantastic. I worked for the copywriter and the art director, and one of the account managers. So that was a real sort of baptism by fire, because I got to use business skills and art skills. You know, it was a small agency where I got to do a little bit of everything from casting, talent, to going to the photo shoot, to bringing the pitch to the client and selling the value of that. So fast forward, I was in the advertising agency business, sort of master of all trades. And as an account executive, you are the point person that represents the agency and all the aspects of the agency, and you're selling knowledge to the client. Agency business changed over the years. Cable was growing. I thought it was interesting. One of my bosses was, in retrospect, a mentor, and she said, you know what? Women have an opportunity to be in sales, and she introduced me to a number of people in the print business, but cable was growing. Somebody took a leap of faith on me in my ability to sell and tell stories, and I got a job selling at Travel Channel, which at the time was owned by Carl Icahn, who owned TWA, which is also no longer in business. From there, went to Comedy Central, which was fantastic. That was a joint venture at the time between HBO and MTV. I was there for 10 years, moving up the sales ladder there, and always really, I think, fortunate for me, and what I love to do is using both sides of my brain, right and left side. So I was in sales, but always saw the value in telling the unique selling proposition of what I was selling to my customers through knowledge, which I say this because I think it's important right now, big data, research, and understanding what you're selling and what the value and benefit and attributes are, huge. But saying it in a way that's interesting and compelling and differentiated and passionate, and being able to close the deal. So taking all those skills. So I was at Comedy Central, I was at Food Network, starting that up, and then actually went to Court TV where Evan is. We sort of were there overlapping for a very short time, and then wound up at Bravo, which is one of the networks at NBCU, and I've been there for 7 years, growing there and taking on more properties. But did not have a plan. I would say that knowing, finding people who you connect with and sort of follow your heart, but on the job, raising your hand a lot and taking on anything that anybody, identifying where companies need help. And there are never enough people to do the work, never. Enthusiasm and a willing to dive in without question, I think, is really a huge value at this point in time where businesses are in flux, in change, under-resourced, and communication is key. The smarter you can communicate and the simpler the language, don't use marketing language, don't use hip and cool words, be authentic, use real English language, all good.
Great, thank you. So these are great stories. They're diverse experiences, and there's a lot of different ways to get into this industry and to begin your careers. A couple things that came out, I think, in all three of these stories are the importance of mentorship and getting outside of your comfort zone. And those would be the two biggest things that I would leave you with from here. I got my job. Evan spoke in a class, and I saw this was this young guy who had a crazy title. He was the president of the Independent Film Channel and Sundance Channel. Those were two networks that I loved. They were cool and bohemian. And this guy was the president. He was wearing jeans, and he had a tie, and he had a cool haircut. And I was like, I want to be this guy when I grow up. And I told him that. But my first thought was, everyone in this room, there's 100 kids in this lecture hall, everyone in this room is going to go and they're going to email Evan and they're going to go try to talk to him, and getting this guy's attention is going to be impossible. But I got outside my comfort zone and I wrote him an email and I started and I said, now I know who I want to be when I grow up. And luckily Evan met with me and wound up really kind of creating a job for me. And those personal connections and getting outside your comfort zone and reaching out to people, that's really the best and sometimes the only way in. If a job posting has been on the internet for 3 weeks, it's probably accounted for already. And each time a posting goes up, there's people at the network, at the company, who have told their friends, and they've told their friends' little brothers that this is there, and they have a warm introduction there. You gotta find people, talk to people before those postings go up, and know when there's gonna be availabilities. And you have to play the numbers game too. You have to do that to a lot of people. You have to meet a lot of people, you have to apply for a lot of jobs, and finding mentors and getting outside your comfort zone is really, in my experience, gonna be the best thing. So we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to spend this time giving you guys an opportunity to ask these great panelists any questions that you have today.
Kathleen, I was wondering, because you went into a slightly different world coming from journalism, if you ever had a hard time convincing someone, whether it was in HR or elsewhere, that even though you hadn't been in that world for your entire career, that you could do the job?
I've applied for 2 jobs in my entire career. The first one at CBS, and then the one that got me to Scripps Networks, where I've been for 12 years. And I think, to your point about being the person who raises their hand and who's always enthusiastic, that sort of attitude gets you promoted without you having to ask to be promoted. I think the most important job skill that anyone can have when they're starting out their career is making their boss look good. No, I mean that in all seriousness. When I have people who work for me who their attitude first thing in the morning is, what do you need me to do today? What can I do to help you move the network along or make this programming better? Those are the people that when I have job openings, I immediately gravitate to them because I know I don't have to ask them, and they're not in it for themselves. Now, they may be in it for themselves, but they're not exuding that kind of attitude, which is another really important thing. We all want people who are ambitious and smart and want to get ahead, but we also mostly want people who put the company first. So I want my employees to be working on making HGTV the best network it can be, not how are they going to get their next job. So giving off that attitude and always remembering that making your boss look good makes you look good is a really important job skill.
I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, Doug, I just have a question. In terms of getting your MBA, can you talk a little bit about how you're able to use that to help set yourself apart?
Well, transitioning from a career path that was going to be a creative to a career path that was going to be business was the key. And because I didn't know anything about business, I just didn't have a clue. And so when I went and got my MBA, it jump-started the business career. So I was able to come out of Columbia, go into a marketing job at a high level, and then from there, when I transitioned to television, I jumped in similarly at a high level, at a manager's level, in finance and strategic planning. So it made all the difference. It put me on a career path that was probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ahead of where I would have been just coming out with an undergrad. Things are a little bit different now, but I still think that if you come out with a graduate degree, you can jump ahead in terms of the level that you enter. And I went straight through, so I didn't have really much work experience. So I was able to jump ahead to where I would have been maybe at much later in my life.
I think we have to wrap it up. Okay, great. Thank you all so much. This was wonderful.